On April 17, 2005, the state chapter in New Jersey celebrated its 5th class to be honored by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame with a Lifetime Service to Wrestling Award presented to Coach John M. Allen. Coach Allen began his lifetime commitment to wrestling some 50 years ago at St. Benedict's Prep School. Coach Allen coached 30 individual champions and 7 national prep champions, the foremost being Mike Caruso, who recorded an 81 wins to 0 loss high school record before earning 3 NCAA championships at Lehigh University. John is an exceptional individual. He has devoted his life in working with young people through athletics, teaching the skills and attitudes fundamental for success in sports, but more importantly, teaching his wrestlers how to win with humility and lose with grace and dignity. Coach Allen has always enjoyed the reputation of being a gentleman coach who brought credit to his profession, teams, schools, community, and family. And now, here is Coach Allen, who will instruct us on skills.
Right, simple as it be, dipping down, dipping your hips and reaching for the head can be very effective as you can move to crab ride. You just rotate off the man's lap and go right after him with an inside crotch grip and possibly follow that up with ideal RC. Or, you can, if you're in the opponent's lap, you can take and do a shin press down. And as you press down on that shin, that allows you to lift your leg and clear it from the crab ride on that side. And you take that free foot and put it on his remaining foot to post it, freeze it to the mat, so that you can then dismount, that is, get off his hips out to the side. And once out to the side, you can either shin shed if he's going for a drape, or you can go for a switch if he has a waist strap, or you can just hip hoist and catch him inside crotch and have control, get a reversal. So you press down on the one shin, lift your leg, take the free foot, freeze his other foot to the mat, and then dismount. And you're out of the crab ride. And then it's catch as catch can. You do what you need to do in order to get the complete reversal. And one remaining maneuver against crab ride is you can spread your feet to keep him from rotating you out of the crab ride. Lean back into him, not with an attitude you're going to pin him, but with an attitude you're going to make him think you'd like to pin him. And once he's in that sort of position, he'll more relax his grip, and you can corkscrew your body, that is, spin it within his grasp, and as he tries to climb back up on top, you work an elbow between bodies, cover his body, and then attack him, and you get a reversal. One more time. If you're in crab ride, you can spread your feet, lean back in him, and as if you're trying to pin him when he's in jeopardy and worried about that fact, what you do is you corkscrew your body, and before he can completely climb up on you, to get control again, you work your arm between and across his body and get a reversal. Put him in true. If you're in half crab and you're off the man's lap, and he's trying to sustain his control with that half crab grip that he has, with his one foot that is, you can use, place your hand in shin shed grip position, and then peel the remaining crab foot off by pushing it off with your free foot. Then what you do is you lean into an opponent's body trunk to freeze him in position until you're able to hip hoist perpendicular and get a reversal grip. Start by inserting inside crotch grip. So that's how you would work against a half crab when you're off to the side, off his lap. Now against reverse cradle. Reverse cradle is very potent, and so you want to learn how to avoid and how to counter, how to block and how to counter RC. In essence, to avoid any cradle, you keep your face well away from your knee or knees. Also, you want to know the prime times for application. You want to know when to worry about potential vulnerability to cradles, in this case the RC. So number one, keep your face away from your knee. And number two, know when you might be vulnerable, when the prime times would occur. And there are many, and several of them are on film in a different part of this film or on another separate film. In general, now, to avoid RC, if you sense it coming, you stretch the target leg and get your head up. If the man is going for an RC, you stretch your target leg and get your head up. You don't let him actually lock his hands. If he has succeeded in getting the cradle and you happen to be down on the mat, you're down pretty low on the mat when he gets it on, that near side you want to even get lower. You want to get your shoulder down, you want to get your chest down, you want to get your hip down, and you try to look away and raise your other shoulder up a little bit to give a little bit of contrary tilt to your body so he can't dump you over toward your far shoulder and then your back. So if you're trapped in it, you get lower than low, particularly on the side from which that cradle's being applied, and you raise your other side up a little bit, that is your shoulder area up a little bit, to try to make sure that he can't dump you over until you can think of something better to do and not just stop him from putting you on your back. If you happen to be on your knees and he is doing a roll through, number one, you want to turn your toes inward so you don't get hurt. You don't want your foot trapped. Number two, if you can work your arm between bodies and across his body and post it and stop his roll through, you would then be in position to break the cradle. You do that first, and then attack him and try to catch him on his back in some way. So one more time from a different angle. If you are in an RC and you're down flat on the mat, you try to get lower than low on the near side. Try to raise your far shoulder up a little bit. Try to look away and give a little bit of contrary body tilt. Get low on one side, the near side, and raise up on the other side, the far side, so as to make it tough for him to get you over. If you're on your knees and he has the cradle on, and he is about to do a roll through, number one, you bring your foot in so he can't, you turn your toes in so he can't trap your toes and injure you. As he starts into the roll through, you try to reach across his body and post a hand so you can stop his roll through, break the cradle, and then attack him and see if you can catch him on his back. If he is going to succeed on the roll through, then what we would do is we would overroll. We would go with the roll action, not go to our back and stop, but go with it. And then as we come up to our knees, if that cradle were to still be on, which likely it would be, then we would attack single head out. So we're going to go over into the cradle, the roll through. Now when we come out of it, we attack single head out. Eventually we would go to double leg drop. Eventually after that we'd go after a half Nelson as we dump him over to his back. If you have the capability of doing such things, you might apply a counter RC, where you have to work your elbow up and through and get his head and lock on your own RC, and then the man that gets his head up the more is the man that wins the contest as to which man with the RC is going to win out. So you have to not only get the counter reverse cradle on, but you also have to get your head up. Now, counter reverse cradle can be applied against a standing reverse cradle. If an opponent puts on a standing reverse cradle, some people will have the capability of applying a counter RC, getting their head up, and then eventually breaking the other man's cradle and bringing him down to his back. If you're on your knees and working against an RC, it's possible to sit through away by putting your hand out as a block against his hip, by grabbing his wrist so he can't take the cradle and unlock it and change to a pancake as you sit through. And then you break the cradle by stretching your head back, your leg out a little bit, and you do duck end the tape action to get a reversal. One more time. He's got the cradle on. You sit through, grab the wrist, put the back of your hand against his hip so he can't step around. Grab the wrist is to prevent a change off to a pancake by opponent. The potential change off. And then you use duck under action, neck and back strength and leg strength to break the cradle, come in behind him and gain control. Number 1 against RC, whenever we can get it, is we attack single head out. So we'll do that one more time. If opponent has RC on us and we're on our knees, they're able to rise to our knees, and we can pivot in toward them and get single head out grip with 2 hands. We'll pull that knee into our chest, deepen with our outside arm, reach across, get double leg drop, dump, and go right after the head, go after the inside crotch, and take what was potentially to be a pin grip for opponent and turn it into a pin grip of our own. All right, a couple more thoughts with regard to RC is if you're on your hip, an opponent has an RC on, and he tilts to his hip or he goes to his hip. If that top man goes to his hip, maybe with an attitude to get a little more oomph into his dump to the far shoulder, then what you might consider is a step over. Just do a step over action. Catch him when he's in an off-balance position, and eventually you might be able to slip out of the RC and reverse it. It's also a... Now, don't ever allow Gazzone completion to RC. Matters could never get worse than to be so trapped than when trapped in Gazzone RC. So if you're on your far hip and you're wary of that, because foot of the tied leg down close to the mat, as close as possible. Now we'll show you again what Gazzone RC looks like, just so you'll see why you've got to keep your foot down close to the mat. The top man, it will do a little high leg over. And when he does that high leg over, he'll work his knee under the foot. And he'll start coming around to the front, coming around to the front, coming around to the front, until he has you on your back flat. So you cannot allow the opponent to get his knee under your foot, and you can avoid that to some degree, hopefully fully, by pressing your foot down close to the mat and keeping it as close to the mat as possible. Now working against side cradle, basic side cradle. We'll use counter cradle. We'll do it from 2 positions. If you happen to be standing up on your inside foot, an opponent applies a side cradle, and he starts to sit you backward, you grab his leg from the outside, and you slip your instep inside under his leg as he brings you backward, and then with your other leg, your free leg, you lift his foot so that you can secure cradle on him. And then you kind of push off with your posted foot up into him enough to let him know and the referee know that the other man has lost control and you have gained control, and thus you can get not only the pin, that's always possible, but also the reversal and the near fall points that will go with that reversal as a follow-up. Now if he has side cradle on and he is trying to circle your butt, he's trying to circle around to the other side of you, again you can slip an instep behind his leg and then allow him to go to that other side of you and immediately lift and apply the side counter cradle. So counter cradle can be very useful against a basic side cradle. Also, if he has a side cradle and would care to do a roll through action, roll across his back to get you over onto your back, what you can try to do in anticipation of that is work your arm between his body and yours, reach over his back, and post as he starts into his rollover. Once you've got him trapped, you break the cradle first, and then go for the pin. So a hand post against a rollover is a counter move to a cradle completion. Now if he has the cradle on, and you have not worked your arm between bodies, and he's doing a roll through, and you're not able to stop the roll part of it, you overroll. You go with it. You ultimately alternately scissor your two legs together and break the cradle. Now when you scissor your two legs together, you make sure you're working from your hip so that as you stretch your legs and lean back away from the cradle, you don't press your own two shoulders to the mat and pin yourself in an attempt to get away from it. So overroll to a leg scissor on your own leg to a stretch action can break you out of the cradle. All right, it's important to learn how to avoid cross faces. If you're in referee's position and the top man happens to be trained to go for cross face right off the whistle, then you want to be aware of that, and you bring your inside arm forward, and at the same time bring your ear to your bicep or shoulder area. That is, you weld your ear to your own arm or shoulder area, and then grab his wrist that's reaching across in front of you, and pivot in and catch him in front. So one more time, if you anticipate. Now doing it again, if the cross face is anticipated on the whistle, we bring the inside arm forward, bring our ear over to our shoulder or bicep area, catch his reaching on the wrist of it with our other hand, our outside hand, and then pivot in and try to catch him in front and then wrestle against him, see who can do what. If we happen to be prone on our stomach and our opponent is behind us and he's looking at a cross face, perhaps as a lead up to a cross face cradle, we want to keep our head flat. Now to get the cross face as a lead up to the cradle, he has to try to slap it on, and what we would do is put our face flush to the mat so he can't get the cross face. In so doing, we make ourselves somewhat vulnerable to bar Nelson. So if he attempts bar Nelson, we've got to get our head up. If he releases on the bar Nelson and tries to go back to cross face, then we got to get our head back down. So it's a battle of wits to see who can do what. Now, another time that cross face is applicable is when you're in a boot of some sort, a grapevine, a crab ride, a stretcher scissors, and we'll use as an example crab ride. If we're in a crab ride and we anticipate a cross face coming at us, we take our holy cow grip on our own head, and it blocks off the cross face at least temporarily, and then you've got to come up with something to do while you've got the cross face blocked off. But in any event, you can block the cross face by just doing a holy cow type reaction to his attempt before he can get it on. And finally, if a man is in on a double leg drop, cross face is certainly applicable against double or single head out, and you want to learn to not over penetrate with your head, but actually your ear to the front outside portion of his thigh. If your head is away from the leg or your head goes beyond the leg, you make yourself very vulnerable to cross-face application. So you've got to place your head in such a position that he cannot really get the cross-face applied. Now continuing with counter moves, Saturday moves essentially are counter moves for the most part. We'll work against double trouble. Double trouble, if you have a whizzer on, double trouble is a counter move to whizzer. But if you use drill action, as the opponent reaches up to get double trouble, you can keep him from actually getting the grip. If, however, he's balanced enough, quick enough, strong enough, and all else that he gets it on, as soon as he gets it on, you pivot to face him and bring your elbow down and in so he loses his leverage to turn you over to your back. And then it's catch as catch can. The two men have to wrestle to see who gets control. So if ever he gets it on, you want to pivot the face and get an elbow down and in so he loses his leverage to turn you. If he gets it in and you feel that you're going to go over, that's when you go to the exotic. You slide your knees in under him and you elevate with one or both feet using your trapped arm, the sort of whizzer grip you have to help you get him over. And one more time, there's a little bit of duck under action involved also in this counter move. He gets the double trouble, and he's going to put you over on your back. You slide your knees in under him, elevate, duck under, pull down and in with your arm, arm, the one that you have a grip on his arm with, and you get him over to his back and reverse him. All right, against elevator. Not such a common move anymore, but still a move and still a worthy move. Number one, you would want to keep your knee in against his butt. If your knee is flush against his butt, he can't get his instep inside your knee to do the elevator. If he happens to have his foot in elevator position, then for balance, which he's trying to destroy with his elevator, you try to post a hand if possible, get your head up if possible, and circle into him a little bit if possible. All of which will make it very difficult for his elevator to succeed. All right, against forearm. If opponent reaches under and gets forearm, or any time, whatever position we're in, if opponent gets forearm, one possible thought is to roll our hand up over his arm, and that breaks his grip. He gets forearm, we bring our hand inside and up and over, and that frees us from his grip. Now, if he gets forearm and our hand is on the mat, what we can do is slide our hand away from him along that mat, and then wing him and do near side roll action to a step over and put him on his back. And still another item that might be used against forearm from a certain position is if opponent applies forearm when we're on our hip, or applies forearm and puts us on our hip, whenever he has that forearm and we're down on our hip, we would try to slip our hand inside through the opening and turn and go outward across our back and escape the predicament that we're in. One more time. Opponent has forearm grip. We're on our hip, or he's placed us on our hip. We take our hand and dive it through, slip it through underneath his arm, rotate outward, and recover base. All right, versus flip. That is a shoulder roll without the wrist grip. Number one, you want to keep opponent's leg or legs covered and control his hips. Don't attempt to pin opponent when he flips. The effort will most likely fail, and you're liable to lose your balance and get reversed. Just lock his leg from going and control his hips. If opponent will succeed in flipping, you can simply apply reverse drag type action and go the other way. That is, circle and show up on the other side. One more time. If opponent flips, you can just simply go the other way, circle and show up on the other side. All right, a big issue is working against a grapevine. First thought, do not wait until you've suffered a bad experience before learning blocks and counters to the various leg rides and pins, particularly grapevine. Also, become well aware of the prime times for their application, particularly the grapevine. Note when to worry about your own vulnerability to boots. The prime time for a grape coming in is when you're on all fours, that is, when you're kneeling. The only time the bottom man should be stationary in such position is just prior to the ref's starting whistle. For to be found so inert invites boots. The top man will just slip a boot in. You block the near arm, slip a boot in. When you're in bear position, if ever you're up in a bear position, you're vulnerable to a boot. The opponent could, the top man could slip a boot in. When you have fully stood up, sometimes the top man, to retain control, will slip a boot in. That's dangerous to him, to his hip. If you do some wing-ding move, his hip could get torn up, but he still might insert a boot and keep you from getting a neutral. When you're executing a far roll, and in fact you might consider leaving far roll out of your repertoire if the opponent's a good boot man, because he can move diagonally up toward your far shoulder as you go into the roll and easily insert a grape. When you're in far ankle ride, perhaps far ankle and cross face, which might be acting as a distraction, he can slip in a grape if he so cares. It can also be done against the wizard. It can be done from leg hook ride. The grapevine can be inserted from Turk. And a particular worry of a grape coming in is when you have a headlock or Granby pin grip on opponent. If you have the headlock grip on opponent, you want to stay perpendicular to him and keep your top leg away from him so he can't insert a grape. If you allow him to insert a grape, he'll do a roll through. He'll counter the headlock and come up on top of you. And similar is true if you have Granby pin grip. If you have Granby pin grip, you want to stay perpendicular to your opponent and try to maintain control in such a manner as to not allow him to get a grape. If he can come over top with his leg and slip a grape in, then you're vulnerable to a roll through, to him climbing on top perhaps. All right, continuing versus grape, and speaking about blocks as opposed to counters, keeping the guy from actually even getting the grape. When kneeling, if you sense a near grape coming in, you can sprawl the target leg. That is, flatten hard to the outside of front thigh. One more time. If you feel the grape coming, just sprawl the target leg. You drop down hard to the outside of your front thigh. If you're on your knees and care to stay up on your knees, you can bring elbow close to ribs, and if it's a near grape coming in, you catch his shin. You toss the shin to the rear and pivot opposite. If you're tossing inside, you pivot outside. One more time. You catch the shin. It's an awkward grip that you have, but it's sufficient to toss his leg to the rear, and then you pivot the opposite way. If it's a far grape, instead of catching shin, you catch the sole of the foot. You toss it to the rear, and now you pivot again to the opposite direction, which would be inside this time. One more time. If you can catch far grape coming in, that is, catch the sole of the foot as it's being delivered, you toss to the rear and pivot opposite. If you happen to pivot in and grab the leg from inside crotch, if that is your choosing, it is possible to continue that pivot in against the near grape. As the near grape comes in, you catch the leg from inside. You could pivot and possibly even go into a reversal mode, a step over or a leg drop of some sort. But on the other hand, if the opponent is alert, the opponent could push your head down and in and apply a far half Nelson and put you over in a crucifix grip, and that puts you in worse trouble than just having a grapevine in. So pivoting in after getting an underhook is a possible way of getting neutral or reversal, but the underhook grip does make you vulnerable somewhat to a far half, which leads to a crucifix. Now, if you're executing a far roll, you have to be very careful against a grapevine coming in. And so what you do is you try to make sure that you're curled up in a ball, knees close to chest, and you weld your knees together. So a grapevine insertion is impossible. If the opponent attempts to put one in late, you can use the back of your forearm and hand to toss the opponent over, to shed him, in other words, and then hip hoist and get control. One more time from a different angle on the far roll. If you're executing a far roll and you're concerned about a grapevine coming in, you curl up in a ball, you weld your knees together. If a grape is attempted late, you use the back of your hand and your forearm to shed that leg, finish your far roll with a hip hoist. If you have stood up, an opponent is with the intent of inserting a grape, you drop your hips down and out. You put your leg in a position where it's very tough for the opponent to get a grapevine in. All right, and now some counters to grapevine. Let's say the opponent has managed to somehow get a grapevine in, a near grape in this case. What we can do is stretch the grape leg and drop down hard to the front outside of our target leg, and then use our free instep, if need be, to peel off his grape a little bit, if it's still clinging to our leg, so that we can now bring our target leg knee over top his leg and recover base. One more time from a different angle. The opponent has a grape in. We drop down hard to the front outside of our thigh, we use our free foot, the instep of it, to take his foot out of the grapevine position if it's still clinging to a grape, so that we can now bring our target leg knee over top his leg and recover base and get out of it. Next, the hip shuck combo. A little combination of moves. If one doesn't work, probably the other one will. If the opponent has a grape in, before he settles in and gets a lot of balance, you do a hip shuck action, not losing your own base, but trying to create an imbalance on the opponent's part, and then work your elbow close to your ribs between his body and yours, and then across his body you reach and you trap it. One more time. He has the grape in, you do hip shuck action, that is you shrug your hip, try to take him off balance, bring elbow back between bodies, get your arm across his body, and you have trapped him and certainly have secured at least the reversal, and maybe more will come out of it. Now if you attempt to hip shuck him and he's well trained, he will post and brace with a foot so that he doesn't lose his balance. As he does that, as he brings his foot around, you can reach inside, grab his ankle, sit through to the inside, pull his heel up to his butt, and then with the crook of your arm, thrust that crook of the arm into the instep of the opponent's raised foot, and then continue your reversal. Just work your way back up on top. Again, different angle. If you do a hip shuck feint, that is, you act like you're trying to hip shuck them and get them to post the foot for balance, you can reach inside, grab that foot in your hand, sit through to the inside, and then with the crook of your free arm, thrust it up against his instep and work your way up on top to get a reversal. All right, some more counters to grapevine. From kneeling, if the grape is in, you can thrust your inside knee diagonally forward and drop to the inside hip so that your upper body then hovers over opponent's grape leg. You drop your upper body weight down on that grape leg to freeze it in position so that your own leg can be ungraped by merely straightening your own leg. Just straighten your leg and that breaks his grape. You keep the ungraped leg, the now ungraped leg, flat against the mat to prevent a regrape, and then use your other leg's instep to lift the opponent's foot off your leg and out of the way so you may fully clear yourself by bringing your knee of the previously graped leg over opponent's leg and then rotate the base. One more time. From kneeling, you thrust the inside knee diagonally forward and then drop your weight down on opponent's leg so as to freeze his leg. Stretch your leg so the grape is lost. Use your free instep to lift his foot off your leg so you can now use that leg to climb and recover base. Another method of countering leg break, from kneeling, thrust the inside knee diagonally forward and drop this time to your inside shoulder so that sufficient momentum can be created for high leg over action. Once over on the other side, there are some alternatives. You can push on the top of opponent's grape knee and then slide your own ribs toward opponent's head so that you can rotate your body and apply cross-face action, climb, and come up with a Jacobson as part of your reversal. One more time. From kneeling, you thrust your inside knee diagonally forward and drop to your inside shoulder. Do high leg over action, get to the other side, push on opponent's grape knee, work your ribs up his ribs toward his head, and then apply cross-face action and climb into full control with a Jacobson. Still another method once you get to the other side. If you start the same initial action, go to your shoulder and do high leg over. Instead of pushing on that knee, you can grab the knee hock and start to pull it toward yourself But you have to be careful because he could whip his leg across you and get you in double grape. That would not be good. So as you pull his knee toward you, you must, as soon as your grape leg comes free, you must hip hoist. You have to hip hoist your grape leg completely free so he can't whip a leg across in double grape. Still another possibility, if you have done high leg over action, and in the midst of that high leg over action, his grape comes loose, it comes undone, then and only then would we turn toward the head, plant a hand for balance on his far side, and insert a half Nelson with our free hand. If we attempt that sort of thing while the grape is still in, we did a high leg over and the leg didn't loosen, the grape is still on, if we turn toward his head, plant a hand, and attempt to insert a half, we're very vulnerable to guillotine. He'll bring us over in a guillotine, and that would not be good. One more time, high leg over action. If we turn toward the head without ungraping the leg, or without that grape coming loose, then we are vulnerable to a guillotine. He'll just bring us over to our back and lock up a guillotine, and we're in bad trouble. All right, still listing some cannons to grapevine. This next one is a back switch cannon. You kind of bait your opponent into seeking a far underhook grip by rotating your hip up into him. It takes him a little bit off balance and distracts him also. And then you go quickly to the inside with action there, back switch action there, and thrust that back switch up onto him so that you can come up on top as he loses his balance. One more time. You start outward movement as if you're rotating out, and then quickly you change direction, bring your arm up over his back. That's what's called back switch action. And then continue into reversal, either of the leg hook sort or the Jacobson sort, whichever is there for you, whichever one you prefer. If the opponent has a far underhook, then you can use what we call backstroke cannon. You bring your outside hand toward your inside hand, not toward your groin area. You bring it across toward your inside hand. It puts a lot of pressure on his arm. And then you grab the wrist and thrust your outside knee diagonally forward and drop to your outside hip. At that point, you grab the wrist of opponent's underhook arm with your other hand and turn his palm upward if you can. Use your own knees to put a pinch on opponent's leg while simultaneously maintaining the wrist grip and initiating a true backstroke action with your free arm over opponent's near shoulder. Finally, you rotate, pursue control via Jacobson or leg hook. One more time. If opponent gets the far underhook, you bring your outside hand toward your inside hand. And then bring your outside knee diagonally forward and drop to your outside hip. At that point, if not slightly before, you get a grip on the wrist. Get it with your other hand. Turn his palm up. And then with a knee pinch, begin your backstroke action with your arm. And then rotate up on top with either a Jake or with a leg hook. If your opponent happens to get a far underhook in and you care only to punish him for the fact that he put a grape and a far underhook on, then you can reach up and salute him by grabbing your own head. Puts a lot of pressure on his arm. You kind of wish he hadn't done what he did. But you can't stay there forever. You have to have reversal techniques or methods to break the grapevine and get out of the underhook, whatever it might be. Another sucker move against a grapevine, if opponent gets the far underhook, it doesn't matter whether he has the underhook on the leg or on the arm. It would not matter, and we've done it against the leg underhook grip, the spread eagle type grip, previously on film, so we'll do it against the arm here. If he gets that sort of grip, we kind of clamp onto his arm, trap his arm, and then go toward our shoulder and do a high leg over action. We don't go very far and we don't go very high with our high leg over action, and try to trap him in a stacked position. One more time. He has the grapevine, he's got the underhook. We clamp his arm, we trap his arm. We go to our shoulder. We do a high leg over action, a short, low one, and try to bring him into a tuck position and sucker him into a pin grip before he realizes what's happening to him. It is possible to effectively work that move.